I'd like to call the order of the New York City Transit and Bus Committee meeting. Let's get started with our safety announcements.
Your safety is of foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen to the following instructions. In the event of an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room, and 911 should be called. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell D down the hallway past the elevators. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. Thank you and have a safe day.
Great, thank you. Welcome, it's nice to see everyone. I'd like to get started with our public speakers.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. President. We have 5 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that, in the interest of time and fairness to all, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware of the clock at the front of the room and the warning light you will see reminding you when you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. The first speaker today will be Murray Bowden, followed by Jason Anthony.
I'm Murray Bowden. I've got the book on Friday and went through it very carefully. I want to relate what's in that book to global warming. I followed very closely the transition of the buses and the trains, buses in particular, to electric buses, and the construction of the infrastructure for them, and the hardening of the rail yard in Rockaway. Noticed that as well. And the flooding that happened in the last storm caused by global warming. And so that the overriding concern is what this committee does to alleviate and reduce any excess use of fossil fuels. It's difficult. The world is not easily recognizing that resources have reached the end of their limit. So I have a few minutes to just mention that to you and acknowledge the efforts of the president of New York City Transit and Bus and going forward that way. The other thing I want to touch on is what Robert Lynn said a few minutes ago about you were exactly correct about the vaccine mandate, and it needs to go further. And the more you speak about it, and you put it quite eloquently, it has to be here. That's the second most important thing, global warming and a vaccine for everybody. Thank you for mentioning it.
The next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning, Greg. Good morning, Lawrence Schwartz. And good morning to the rest of the Transit Committee meeting members. Jason Anthony from the Amazon Labor Union, here after having a procedure this past Friday. I'm here today receiving good news, but again, some NYPD officers, and I hope that Chief O'Reilly, that I wonder why she's here, she forgets that why she doesn't comply with the TSA mandate of wearing masks on underground subway stations. The other night, around 1 o'clock in the morning, I was exiting at my home station in Atacama Barclays Center. Two officers, one of them wasn't wearing masks. And like always, I told them, facial expressions. And like always, I told them, where is it your mask on? And that person told me, low-life person. I wonder why is she here to confront us? So
Please conclude.
that's all I have to say. I'll see you guys in finance.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Lisa Daglian, followed by Christopher Greif.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. As we continue to see pandemic ridership records shatter and trains and buses get more crowded, we're also continuing to hear the unfortunate but earnest message: we're running as much service as we can with crews we have available, especially on the sea. Now that transformation has ended, it's time to rebuild. We're hoping for an update on how many of the retirees you reached out to have taken you up on your offer to return. How is the new class of hires coming? How is the revised training going? Have you found further ways to safely condense the schedule and get people in more quickly? We know that crew shortages are not a New York-specific issue, and we've seen incentives offering thousands of dollars for new hires in other states. Is the MTA considering that? Bringing in experienced retirees for a limited time is a great way to get more people in and up to speed quickly for a rapid rollout, but in the long run, it's essential to develop a strategy for retention and long-term staffing. The same is true for all of transit and the MTA. Succession planning is essential for the health of the agency and benefit of riders. Ops planning, maintenance of way, arts for transit, communication, finance, and definitely HR all need robust staffing. It's imperative for the agency to plan for today and tomorrow. It's great that riders are getting back on board, and we're looking forward to seeing even more people returning to work, school, and life in our next normal. Ensuring there is enough service to get us where we need to go is key to ensuring people get back on transit. Having enough people to run the buses and trains that make our region run is a critical part of that equation. Clearly, money's going to be an ongoing issue, and we urge you to support operations funding at the federal level to help pay for the hiring you need to do and service you need to run now and into the future. We'll continue to support you however we can. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Christopher Greif, followed by Deborah Greif.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christopher D. Greif. Yes, I'm here, but today I'm very upset, not with the MTA, but our fellow passengers. And Q know why I'm here today, because I am really disappointed of our customers and the safety of people with disabilities and seniors. On another day, on Thursday, I was supposed to be traveling down the 68 bus, and I can't even, and it gotten worse because the bus gets crowded. I can understand buses do get crowded. I understand they're supposed to follow the new white line. Be honest with you, they don't. They do not follow the rules. They do harass the bus drivers on the 68, and the drivers are trying to tell them, let me get the passengers off, especially with a walker, a wheelchair, or a person in a cane. And you know what? They almost ran them all over. It wasn't easy. I had to get my mother off from the back of the bus, and lucky she's been practicing her physical therapy. So, Craig, Frank, we need to work on something about this, and maybe we can get the longer B68 buses to run on Coney Island Avenue. It is not your fault. We have to deal with lots of cars in Windsor Terrace that are making the buses stuck in traffic for 30 minutes from Windsor Terrace to Church Avenue. And it's even getting worse when the bus finally gets into Trump and Wabash houses over there. They do not follow procedure when humongous shopping carts are not supposed to be on the bus. The drivers tell them, we can't let you on. They're getting harassed much more on the 60A and, yes, the B1 as well, and times the 36. So can we work together and do something about this? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final speaker is Deborah Greif.
Morning, everyone. As my son Christopher just said, he only told you part of it. It was horrible. And I love traveling on buses and trains. And of course, yes, Access-a-Ride has improved tremendously. But unfortunately, if this keeps going on, what's happening on the buses, I may be forced to use Access-a-Ride more, which will take away a lot of my freedom. Why am I upset? Got on, we came down. I have to say I was on the B69 bus coming back because we went to go to Wegmans. From Wegmans, we then changed for the B68. Okay, the driver says I'm late, but he was very patient. He still pulled up close enough so I could get on. I had a little trouble tapping because I'm testing the Omni, but I got it. But I gave it, and I purposely sat down, not where the wheelchair seats can lift up, but in the first single seat. So this way, in case wheelchairs had to board, I was out of their way. I did exactly what I was supposed to. What happened next was at Church Avenue, drivers had to change. People almost beat up the driver. All he kept saying is, stop pushing me, let me. And they finally were able to exchange, but it was horrible. People don't respect. They understand they're frustrated. The buses are late. But he can't go, he's not supposed to plow through cars to get to the stop. What got really worse is when they let a person on with some kind of cart that they shouldn't have, and then by the time we got to Kings Highway, one, they didn't let her off. They crushed us so that the only way my son could get me off at a stop that was not near my house was at Avenue U, and he had to take me out through the back, and some people wouldn't move. After a while, I had to push them with my walker. This is not how I was raised. I don't like doing that, but I side with the driver. I did hear him being cursed out and called names because he is of Asian descent, which is disgusting. So we need to make improvements because customers are not respecting their fellow passengers and drivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes the public comment.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our speakers. So welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to highlight a couple of the important public health issues that New York City Transit is raising awareness for this month. As you probably know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so our mask force will be out tomorrow handing out pink masks throughout our system. Distributing pink masks not only highlights the need to mask up in our system so we can do everything we can to prevent the transmission of COVID-19, but also the importance of preventing screenings, self-exams, and early detentions of breast cancer to save lives. So thank you all thank you to all our volunteers who will be out in our system tomorrow. Finally, I think it's important to remember that New York City Transit celebrated Hispanic Heritage Month, which ran from September 15th to October 15th. I'm proud to recognize the contributions of our Latino and Latina colleagues here at Transit. I'd like us to continue to bring to the forefront the impact the Hispanic community has had not only in transportation but also in government, business, arts, and our larger society. I'll now turn it over to Greg. Craig, are there any changes to the 2021 work plan?
Yes, Madam Chair. The results of the biannual customer satisfaction survey will be published in the customer satisfaction report in November instead of this month. Transit survey was consolidated with other MTA agencies, and the change means that the survey just recently closed.
Okay, great. Okay, you want to start with your president's report?
Absolutely. Thank you, Hayden. First, board members, I'd like to start by addressing a few of your comments from the September committee meeting. So, Andrew, in response to your question regarding station pumps and accessible boarding areas, so there are 769 pump units at 290 pump plants located throughout our system to protect stations and tunnels. And in regards to the doors of the 211s, yes, they will line up with the raised accessible boarding areas, the same as the R160s do today. So thank you for your comment. And Victor, you had asked about our messaging to accessorized riders regarding vaccinations and masks. So we had messaged on social media and sent out a special edition of our On the Move newsletters, reminding customers to get vaccinated and to wear masks. We also resent our vendors our mask requirements as a reminder. As you know, safety is my top priority, so we'll continue with this messaging to our customers. So I want to thank this entire committee for their thoughtful comments and questions, and we'll continue to follow up with everyone as appropriate. Thank you. Yes, Andrew.
Those 736 pumps you just mentioned, how widely distributed are they?
Yep. So they're throughout the system, and based upon your other question about percentage of stations, we're currently conducting a survey, and we'll have more detailed information for you.
Thank you.
Larry has a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, I'll hold this if it's not appropriate to have this conversation right now. And I appreciate, but it triggered something when you answered Andrew's question on the number of pumps. I think it would be a good exercise, and I know that all the operating entities are under tremendous pressure on not enough staffing, and there's a lot of competing interests going on. So I think this could be an exercise where you need to bring it out. You should consider bringing outside resources. This is a multi-billion-dollar agency, and there are certain things where it's money well spent if you spend it the right way. The Inspector General in September put out a report regarding preventative maintenance procedures and found in one area with these diesel pump and trucks that there either wasn't a PMP in place or it wasn't being thing. I think it would be, because we're going to have constant extreme weather situations and, that somehow maybe bringing in an outside entity is that, A, somebody should look at all the preventative maintenance procedures. Do they need to be updated? Are they effective? There may be areas where we don't have preventative maintenance procedures, and we should. There may be places where you have preventative maintenance procedures, but you don't need them anymore because they were applicable a decade ago or longer. And the other thing is training. I have no idea what kind of training we provide on an agency-wide basis, both to our workers as well as management. But it seems to me is that we need to have an extremely robust training system and training program here, not to make sure that the agency personnel can implement all kinds of preventative maintenance procedures or any other systems or procedures that are put in place. But there are times where people want to move up the ladder. There should be plenty of opportunities to train people to take on new job responsibilities, new tasks. And I also want to just make sure that we have a very robust management training program. Because a lot of things that I think this board has seen, I have seen over the 6+ years I've been on the board, is things break down due to management failure. It's not transit worker failure, it's management failure. The lack of follow-up, the lack of oversight. And we spend billions and billions of dollars running this agency. And I think in the year of 2021, soon to be 2022, again, anytime a board member asks a question, someone at the MTA should be able to push a button on a computer and the information 98% of the time should be able to pop up in a time-efficient manner. Every successful company, private sector business, they wouldn't survive if every time the CFO, the CEO, the COO, or someone asked the question that staff could not provide the data reports, the information. And again, to me, this is an area where you go to a Microsoft, you go to a major tech company, you figure out what it is you need and how much it's going to cost for them to do it and how fast they can do it, as opposed to putting the burden on our chief technology officer or the tech department, because sometimes, quite frankly, it's going to be like watching the Titanic make a U-turn between two icebergs. It's not, it's going to take forever if it happens at all. And I think we're at a time where we still see way too often, and things have gotten better and there have been improvements. And I apologize, Madam Chair, that I'm taking this much time, but it triggered something to me that I've been thinking about when you answered Andrew's question. Sorry, Andrew. All too often, too many things still slip through the cracks. I'm not finding fault with anything, but it's either you don't have the procedures in place, you're not aware that these procedures in place, there's not an awareness that the follow-up, that there should be red flags, that there should be things that pop up and say, okay, we inspections this, inspections that. So I'm just saying that in order to minimize issues or problems on a going forward basis, especially when it comes to extreme weather condition situations, which are happening more and more frequently, but not just limited to that. It's, to me, everything. There really should be a complete and thorough top-down, bottom-up review, whether it's on PMPs or other things, and decide areas that need to be modified or updated, places where you need something that doesn't exist, making sure that people are properly trained so they can be successful in carrying out those mandates or those orders, and just making sure, in my opinion, the people that work for this agency are only going to be good as the support that they're given. The manager's only going to be good as the support they're given and the training that they will need to do their jobs effectively, and all the way down the list. And we should be putting the money and the resources into those things, because it will pay dividends 50-fold by becoming more efficient, more effective, and also minimizing mistakes and leaving us vulnerable to liabilities on all kinds of different fronts. So that's my little speech. Thanks.
So I just want to just say one thing. First of all, thank you, Commissioner, for your comments. You know, a lot of what you just described is a lot of what we've been really focusing on, myself, Demetrius, Frank, in the last 90 days since, I've been asked to take on this acting role. Rather than give you a comprehensive answer of what we were doing, though, I'd like to come back to you and just to share with you, because a lot of, whether it be the workforce development or making better use of data or management, we've started those efforts. So, I'd like to come back to this committee and give you a little bit of an update of all those efforts.
Just needs to get on steroids.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So thank you. Okay, with that said, I'd like to continue with the report. Thank you. So I'm very excited to kick off our meeting today with some extremely promising ridership trends. Ridership for New York City Transit, bus, and subway continues to trend upwards. Our latest numbers are coming in at 4.6 million riders, or 55% of our 8 million pre-pandemic daily riders. Over the last month, we have seen a continued upward trend, as exemplified by last week's ridership, where for 4 consecutive weekdays, subway ridership was above 3 million daily, and average weekday ridership, was above 3 million daily, and average weekday ridership was 1.8% greater than the prior week. With the reopening of schools, the 2-week rolling weekday average rose from a summer high of 2.48 to 3.02 million at the end of September, with a new high of 3.2 million reached just this past Thursday. Total bus ridership rose from a summer high of 1.24 million to 1.47 million and peaked at 1.509 million, and is currently trending at about 63% of normal. And Victor, paratransit ridership, which I know you're specifically interested in, which dropped to 22% of pre-COVID levels at its lowest point last year, returned faster than all other transit services, climbing rapidly to 70% of pre-COVID levels by October 2020, and peaked at 24,788 average weekday riders this summer, and has remained consistently strong at approximately 80% of its normal. For both bus and subway, the most recent ridership data shows ridership is much higher in the AM and PM rush hours than the rest of the day as it was pre-COVID. Specifically for buses, the reopening of schools has clearly reshaped patterns, with 7 a.m. by far the heaviest hour. In the afternoon, the peak hour has shifted to 3 p.m. from 5 p.m. prior to the pandemic. As the reopening of New York City continues, recent gains in ridership have been concentrated in peak hours, shifting relative time of day ridership patterns closer to pre-COVID. There had been some shifting in peak hours, but as ridership grows, we are seeing the rush moving back to prior norms. A review of our current schedules and ridership patterns validates retaining the existing service plan. However, we will continue to watch as ridership patterns evolve. There has been some discussion regarding the level of service as it relates to crew availability. In the short term, reducing scheduled service to address crew shortages saves relatively few crews and may not be very effective given that the crew shortages vary by time of day to day, and line, creating a mismatch in any schedule cut versus crew shortage. We are working towards revising base pick schedules not only to improve service to our customers, but also to move more efficiently assigned crews to their jobs and help address the crew shortage issue. In December, we will implement changes to schedules on 6 lines, reducing crew requirements by 16 crews per day without reducing service. And currently, New York City Transit Dispatch is in the field to adjust service and even out headways if they must cancel a trip due to these crew shortages. We remain committed to bringing New Yorkers back to the system and continue to focus on providing the best service possible. And I'll let Demetrius and Frank speak in more detail to the recent performance numbers. But I'd like to thank them and all our colleagues for their continued dedication and hard work to deliver safe, on-time performance for our riders. But before I turn it over to Demetrius, I'd like to give everyone an update on our hiring initiatives. We are continuing all the aggressive steps I talked about in September to address crew shortages. We are intensely focused on service delivery, bringing on new train operators, conductors, and bus operators. To give you an idea, we currently have a combined 300 train operators and conductors in training classes. Of this, we expect that 91 of them that are training as conductors graduate before year end. Train operator classes are a bit longer and more intensive, but we anticipate 47 new train operators before year end, with more to graduate in the first quarter of 2022. And we have 900 bus operators who have come through training and plan to onboard hundreds more by year end. Our outreach to recent retirees for assignments has yielded about 60 people who have expressed a willingness to come back on a temporary basis to help us while we continue to staff up. I'm ready to welcome these folks back and to also bring new employees into our transit family. And with that said, I'll take any questions.
I have a question, Greg. So is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or is it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 4 consecutive days that we saw an uptick in ridership?
So it's so we saw an uptick in ridership both week to week. So
Okay.
that was the 1.8% from the week prior to the week after. And then each week we've been seeing a steady increase in ridership.
But you said 4 consecutive days, so are people,
So-
more people on the, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So that was, I think, 4 consecutive days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Thursday,
an
so
increase.
people are taking off Friday. Great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, any other, yes, Randy?
As a long time ago former motorman, not train operator, what is the train, how long is it taking to retrain the people who have recently retired?
How long does it take? So it all depends. We went back 3 years, and it all depends on, how long the person recently retired. So we're anticipating that it would take anywhere from maybe 1 to 2 days, and others might need more, closer to a week or maybe more. Again, we're going to make sure that, we get the medical done and the proper training so that when train operators come back and operate trains, that, they're ready for that task. So it depends on when they, how in the past, when they retired.
Thank you.
Sure.
Victor?
I think Randy wants to come back.
So do I.
Right? What do you think, Ada? I think so.
Randy, how many years are you out, Randy?
The last time I operated a train was June of 1980.
Oh,
And I got promoted to
fall outside the
supervisor
3 years.
after
You fall
that.
outside the 3
And I've been
And
retired
Andrew's-
almost 27 years.
okay.
And I think Andrew wants to put in his application as well. So I just constantly see stuff about subways and buses, and I just don't, and commuter trains. Not never, but you need to couple Access-a-Ride into everything that you do. I'm talking about advertisements and media, You just name it, it has to be mentioned consistently. It just always seems to be left off, and I don't want to have to point it out all the time. Just want it to be part of it. And there's a considerable amount of riders that are using it. We're up pretty big, and the numbers are trending up. So
Absolutely.
just please keep that on the radar.
Totally agree. Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for Greg? Yes, Andrew.
Craig, you mentioned that maybe in a few months you're going to be increasing service, but you're going to be doing it with fewer crews?
No. What we're trying to do is we're making more efficient schedules, so that's the same level of service, same frequencies as expected, but able to do it with less crews. So the existing crews will be working a little bit longer in order to achieve that.
That's what I think. Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
And ridership for the weekends, did you mention that? If so, I missed it.
I didn't mention the weekend. Maybe Jay, can you give us the latest, the weekend, what the weekends are looking like?
Sure, it's about 63% on the subway and 62% on the bus, I believe.
53, 52? Is that what he said?
Right, 63 on subway, 62 on bus.
63.
63.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I can't hear for some
Yeah.
reason. Okay. Great, okay. Any other questions? Okay, now I'll turn it over to Demetrius to discuss subways. Good morning, Demetrius.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, I should say. No, still good morning.
I'm pleased to report that subway performance remains strong. September weekday on-time performance was 80.6%, just slightly above the average on-time performance in 2019. However, when discounting the lingering effects of Hurricane Ida, on-time performance would have been 81.6%. These strides are despite continued challenges in crew availability, which caused 36% of weekday delays last month. Service delivery was nearly 90% while we caused service delivery was nearly 90% while we continue to serve approximately 50% of pre-pandemic ridership. And while major incidents increased compared to September 2020, many of these were caused by water and mud from Ida. Our teams continue to work hard to maintain evenness of service and avoid gaps whenever possible. When compared to September 2019, our customer-focused metrics show that the 37-second increase in additional platform times was almost entirely offset by a 28-second lower additional train time. In addition, peak running times improved on almost all lines from pre-pandemic levels, including significant improvements on the 3 and 4 lines, which are 5% faster than September 2019. In other words, customers are on average waiting slightly longer for trains than 2 years ago, but most of this time is made up because travel times are faster. We continue to make progress on crew availability. I was proud to welcome a class of 32 new conductors in September, the first of many classes of train operators and conductors already underway and planned. We're also working on creative ways to increase our resources, including bringing back retirees, offering incentives to work overtime, and evaluating strategies for assigning personnel. We're also continuing the speed efforts that began well before the pandemic. Our teams have cumulatively improved speeds at 728 locations, including 226 since the pandemic began, by correcting formerly slow clearing signal timers and updating speed limits throughout the system. We're working aggressively to complete this work and began work on additional efforts to increase speeds, improve operator confidence, and address slow areas in the system. I recently sent a memo to Subway senior staff re-emphasizing our commitment to the speed effort and formally established a speed team with a new leader to focus on these efforts across the Subway organization. Finally, I'm thrilled to see Subway ridership increasing to now well over 3 million riders per weekday and nearly double the ridership of a year ago. As ridership increases, we continue to rise to the challenge, making the necessary adjustments, showing that we are ready and prepared to welcome New Yorkers back. We look forward to continuing to deliver high-quality service as ridership hits new pandemic-era records in the months ahead. The challenges we faced over the past few months are a reminder that the Subway's workforce always steps up to get the job done, and I can't thank them enough for everything they do.
Thank you, Demetrius. Any questions? Larry?
Thank you, Ada. Demetrius, there have been discussions for at least a couple years now about areas of the system, subway system, where you can improve or increase speed without jeopardizing safety for both workers and passengers. And there were issues regarding arms not going down or lights, and motormen worried about getting dinged. You know, I don't remember all the specificity to it. That's how long ago it was. Curves where you might be able to increase speed. Some would. There was going to be testing done to check all these different locations along the system. I guess my question is, how much longer is it going to take where you can come back to this board and say, we're done, right? Where we could increase speed, we've increased speed. Here are the locations. Here's how much we've been able, here's how, here's what, but we're done. This is how as fast as trains can go on the different lines. Everything has been looked at. Everything has been finished. We're done. When does that happen? Because this has been going on for at least a couple of years. And is it going to take 6 more months? Is it going to take a year? Is it going to take 2 years? Is it going to take 6 weeks? I mean, I just think it's helpful for the board to have a sense of when we get the closure on these different items. So it's got to end at some point, right?
So as far as a specific time period, that I can't give you. What I can say is there is an enormous amount of engineering that goes into defining when a track circuit can be adjusted, when signals can be adjusted, to make sure that it's done safely. So a lot of the time goes into the engineering time in designing it. But there's also a portion of it is tied to cleaning some of the signs themselves, which will continue to always require to be cleaned. So having a good program in place that handles that. I think the efforts with our crews, reinforcing that effort will continue. And I think there are also the fact that there are, when you go through a location now, it doesn't mean that 3 years from now that location hasn't changed. There could have been maintenance in that area that could have changed the joints that are at that location. So I do think that there are some portions of the speed efforts which will continue. But I think the engineering efforts can come to an end, and that I can give you a good estimate on for the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be on the board much longer, right? So I'm just saying for the other members of the board, I've been on this board nearly 6.5 years, believe it or not. Not as long as Andrew, but it's a pretty long time. I just think it would be helpful for the board members and for them to be able to help you and others here is to have clarity and some specificity, because when these things get raised, right, speed, like what can be done and when can it be done and what is always going to be ongoing from a cleaning perspective or whatever it is, because otherwise what you hear from month to month is you get a speed report, and you just at some point you just don't know what it means. You don't know when it's completed. You don't know, right? We're constantly, I don't want to say befuddled, but we're not unsure, and we're always asking questions, right? So I'm just trying to give a better sense of what has a time frame to it and when that time frame will end, and what is just regular ongoing work that it's part of your maintenance procedures or whatever in order to ensure that you're not reducing speed because you're not following certain, right?
Okay. Duly noted. Just one other thing, and both Craig and I acknowledge the fact that when the team was created, they needed a leadership, someone who could be essentially accountable to ensure that all of the initiatives that were put in place are carried through. That was one of the pieces that was really lacking when this was all set up. Setting aside a team that is budgeted for that function and a head who's who's spearheading those efforts. So certainly could get back to you on what has to stay short term, what can be done short term, and what the long term needs are as well.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Dimitri, when you come back to us, can you also inform us on whether you have resource-loaded scheduling software and if you're satisfied with that?
Sure thing.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, I think one of the unspoken elements of Larry's question is there may not be an answer because there's rapidly emerging technologies, and I believe that Demetrius or whoever is in at the time can say, this is what we expect to happen for this period of time, but beyond that, we're still looking at new technologies, and maybe they will develop, and maybe we'll be able to speed up another portion. So I don't know that there's a definitive answer, but it was a good question.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Victor?
So thank you for the report, Demetrius. Appreciate it. Omni has finally come to buses for people with disabilities, so you were able to use our half-fare Metro cards. We're working through that now. I'm on the pilot program. When do you expect it to come to subways? Because it's at a point now where, we tend, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it out loud, we tend to have things that just, disabilities always left on the second stage here. Just want to, be able to tap, get through the automatic gate. And Andrew knows that it stays open way too long. But we have to have it open that long so people with mobility disabilities can get through it. That's another story. It's kind of he rode the train with me the other day. So I just want to make sure that gets up sooner than later, that we can use Omni on the auto gates.
So thank you for your question. There's been a number of correspondence going back, meetings, specifically to that point. Even this morning, we've had a couple of discussions. So I can say that there are active discussions, and I'm sure Q will advise something in the near term that will be publicly issued.
Because Frank's off the hook for the next one, so.
All right. Any other questions for Demetrius? All right. Thank you, Demetrius. Let's go to Frank now for an update on buses and paratransit.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. As Craig mentioned, buses continues to see strong daily ridership, approximately 1.5 million and up to 65% of pre-COVID ridership levels. We have continued to aggressively onboard operators into the system and anticipate returning to pre-pandemic vacancy levels by the end of the year. Unfortunately, as traffic has increased significantly, bus speeds have returned to pre-pandemic levels, impacting much of our metrics. For example, while customer journey time shows a decline from last year, it remains slightly improved against pre-pandemic levels for September. It is clear that New York needs a strong transit system now more than ever to help lead our recovery from the pandemic. And the one thing we can be sure of is that well-enforced bus priority is the most effective way to increase bus speeds and cut commute times. Our busways and bus lanes continue to see improved speeds against 2019 on almost all corridors and time periods. The new busways on Main Street and 181st Street corridors in Queens and Manhattan, respectively, have seen significant speed improvements. In the PM peak, where traffic is generally the heaviest, Main Street speeds have improved by up to 51%, and on 181st Street, up to 42%. In the AM peak, Main Street speeds have improved by 22%, and 181st Street has improved up to 36%. Similarly, other busways and bus lanes implemented earlier also continue to show improved speeds, such as the 14th Street with speed improvements up to 13%, and E.L. Grand Highway in the Bronx and Highland Boulevard in Staten Island, both up about 15%. As ridership returns to pre-pandemic levels, bus lanes and busways implemented thus far in 20 and 21 will benefit nearly 500,000 riders a day. Following on the successes of these bus lanes and busways, new busways are coming to Archer Avenue and Jamaica Avenue on October 24th. We need to replicate these successes wherever possible. So priority one is adding to and improving existing bus lanes and busways. I want to thank Jano and Craig for leading the charge on bus priority with New York City DOT. As a result, New York City DOT has set a goal of up to 20 miles of new or improved bus lanes and including up to 5 new busways. Finally, I want to provide a quick update on our bus network redesign efforts. Over the past month and a half, the Bronx redesign team has been presenting our latest plans to the Bronx Borough Board, elected officials, and interested community boards with a prospect of implementing changes in the summer of '22. There have been a few changes to this project since the publication of the proposed final plan. After receiving valuable feedback from the community about proposed changes and reassessing existing conditions, the BX28 and the BX34 routes alignments will remain as they are today. A final public meeting on the plan has been scheduled for November 9th and will be held virtually from 6 to 8 p.m. This will allow our customers and stakeholders one more opportunity to provide input on the proposed final plan before the matter is brought up to the MTA board at the December board meeting. The project microsite new.mta.info/Bronx Bus Redesign will be updated with the meeting details. We strongly encourage interested parties to check out the website and to see this customer and community-driven plan that will improve bus service for our Bronx bus riders. That concludes the bus report.
Andrew?
Frank, thank you so much, and it's a tribute to the team that's handling this, that they listened to the multitude of people that turned out. I actually attended that Bronx bus design, what was it, last year or something like that, and there were questions about those 2 route changes because of the topography of the Bronx. It's very hilly, and the changed routes would have meant a lot of hills for people, and they listened. So this is great. Thank you.
Great. Larry and then Victor.
Demetrius, I was just talking to Victor about gates, and maybe I missed this somewhere along the way or not, but where are we, and I've talked to Pat about this as the safety head, where are we on coming up with the modern day version of gates for people to travel through when they're using the subway system? Again, we're in 2021. Turnstiles was something that happened in the 60s or 50s. And there are systems in place, and Victor pointed them out to me because in the conversation in Philadelphia, and I think he said in Germany, and there's other places here in Washington, D.C. he mentioned. I'm trying to remember them so he knows I listen to him when he speaks. But, you know, in this day and age, both from an accessibility standpoint for the disabled, whether you're in a wheelchair, but also for people who have strollers, you know, travel patterns and the way people move around today is so different. People walk around with carry-on bags, even on the subway trains, not just in airports, because they're on 4 wheels or 2 wheels. It's easy to carry it around and other things. There's technology, there are systems in place where it's much wider. It's doors that open up. It's something else that opens up. I saw it in London a couple years ago, pre-COVID. All right, so where are we in modernizing in our subway system the ability of passengers to move, all passengers, whether you're disabled or not disabled, or you have a stroller? Where are we in terms of modernizing that component of our subway system?
So the first thing I'll say is I totally agree with you and agree with Victor as well. I mean, I think that's where we have to go, making sure that the system is as accessible as possible. So I think the tap option for Omni is the first start, that will be rolled out the quickest. That will give the option for folks to enter. And then there's also some subsequent work that'll happen. We have a pilot that'll be, we're starting, it will be installed at Sutphin Archer next year, in addition to a pilot at 5 other stations. But Pat Warren is working with some of the teams in chairing, he's chairing some of the teams that are discussing the fare gates and the policies tied to them. But I assure you that your sentiments are shared by the organization at large. It's important, and we'll continue to press those efforts forward.
I understand sometimes the needs for pilots. I hate pilots. I understand the need for a pilot when it's something that's totally brand new and you have no idea you're going into the unknown, and you want to make sure that you know what the unintended consequences are of the unknown. And this is not a criticism or anything. I'm trying to be helpful, actually. It's out there already. There's tried and true systems out there that work. All right. This is not a brand new concept. So my attitude is find the best practice example and let's implement it. And because a pilot means years away, years off from now. It's not, because that's how slow things work. And I think our passengers, whether they're people from the disabled community and you need greater accessibility, or whether it's all passengers, we need to move faster, and we need to make things like this happen sooner. And if it requires, and I chair the Finance Committee, if it requires an amendment to the capital budget and the capital program to put the money in there or to move money around, we'll talk to Jano and others here about doing this. But to me, this is a big deal. It's a critical component. It's ease of flow to get through. And I just think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We should take something that already works, that we know that works and is successful, and install it and put it in place and get it done sooner rather than later.
So, not discounting anything you just said, I think the fact remains a pilot for us being a older system that requires an enormous amount of work to it's not as simple as just installing and it's there, right? So, for example, the first units that come on require the concrete at the location to be chipped out. The communication wires have to be run. Totally cognizant of what you're saying. I think our system is unique to most in that it is. It just takes a little bit of planning to make sure that we do it right, get it right the first time. And I think if we plan for what we think it is, most projects that we currently do wouldn't cut the mustard at the end of the day. So I think there is some effort when we're integrating older systems with new to try it out, but certainly take your point on the expeditiousness that's needed in making sure it gets done.
Yeah, I know my other colleagues here want to speak, and I'm not here to hide this. Look, I understand that there's got to be a balance between smart and fast. I think we can go faster. I've been on the board long enough where there have been projects where people said, "Oh, we got to be careful," da 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 da, and we pushed on because we said, "No, we can make this happen faster," and it did happen a lot faster, right? I'm not going to go into history and all the projects where people said it can't go that fast, it can't get done as fast as you'd like. We have the know-how, we have the resources there. I just think that this is something that it shouldn't be a 10-year program. It's got to, again, it's out there. We can talk to our fellow transit agencies and work with them and figure out what the obstacles they had to deal with and what they had to overcome. I'm just saying to you that while you want to do it smart, I think we need to find ways to speed up the process a lot.
Bob, before Q has something to add, Q.
I just want to add to the conversation. Larry, thank you for advocating. I absolutely agree with you. I just wanted to make note that in this current capital plan, we do have $25 million allocated to looking into the same issue. And I'm actually heading down to D.C. on Thursday to talk to WMATA about their whiteout gates. It's something that we will be piloting to see how we can best integrate it into our system. But thank you so much. Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you're saying.
Great. Bob?
Thanks, Anna. Listening to this, I have the concern that our system is basically the same as when we used to put tokens in the turnstile, and we've sort of automated little elements of it, and we've made it actually easier to circumvent the turnstile with the open gates. And that while virtually the rest of the world has moved to new technologies, we are basically putting Scotch tape over a 19th century technology. And I know there's the constant concern that Larry's raised, the constant interest of having people look at this, look at things. I think that there's so many things tied to how people get in and get out of our system. All of the hundreds of millions of dollars of lost revenues that we've talked about over and over again over the last several years that really all coalesce around whether our system really doesn't make sense, and that we're using an archaic system, and we're doing little bits and pieces. So we look at slam gates, we look at the technology of cards, but we don't ask the basic question of what should a 21st century operation look like, of how you get in and get out, and how we secure that revenue is received. And I do think, whether it is in the Fair Committee, whether it's in the Capital Committee, whether there's a separate committee that takes a look at this, we need to do a real focus and deep dive over whether we've been misguided in moving in one direction for year after year after year, just doing little bits on the edges, and not really come to grips that we need a new system. Thanks.
Noted. Anything else for Frank before he starts with the paratransit report? Frank?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, Frank, I do have, sorry.
Sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
As far as the bus redesign teams that you have together, we're looking at accessible bus stops, making sure accessible features are in there, making sure they're accessible. I just want to,
Yes,
yeah.
that's being looked at, and also as part of the DOT announcement, right? DOT is going to be looking at, I believe it was 25 stops system-wide.
And if there's any issues with DOT, just let me know. So any accessibility things, let me know how I can weigh in and be able to assist.
Thanks.
I'm here for that. And then Jamaica, you said from Jamaica Avenue, they're putting rapid bus?
Yeah, Jamaica and Archer.
From where to where?
It's actually right, I'll have to get back to you to starting.
Jamaica to Archer?
Yep, Jamaica.
Okay.
Jamaica and Archer. I'll get you to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I had. Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
Just, we'll tell everybody to stay out of our lanes there.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that.
Okay.
It worked in Flushing. It'll work in Jamaica.
Thank you. So paratransit ridership remains strong at approximately 80% of pre-pandemic levels. Similar to buses, performance continues to be impacted by increased traffic volumes across the city, compounded by industry-wide driver shortages for both our primary and our broker contractors. While our primary contractors aggressively trying to onboard additional drivers, they continue to see vacancy rates at approximately 20%. The good news is that we are onboarding several new brokers, including Arrow, which came on board in September, and Century, our first New York State certified minority and woman-owned business enterprise broker, earlier this month. As these brokers ramp up their services over the next several weeks, they will continue to provide much-needed additional capacity. In addition to our CTG, our incumbent broker, who continues to provide service for thousands of trips a day. We also anticipate onboarding a third new broker early next year. In addition, this summer, we began restoring shared rides, which is an integral component of accessorized service. This followed similar decisions taken by New York City TLC as well as paratransit agencies across the country, including Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. We're happy to report that since the resumption, performance has improved. We have seen significant decline in broker no-shows, improvements in the average call speeds and the percentage of calls answered at our call centers, and a decrease in complaints. It is important to also note that 85% of the trips we deliver continue to be direct trips. This month, we will return our assessment centers to the 100% capacity while maintaining a safe environment for our new applicants and current customers. This will help reduce the wait time for customers to get assessments and allow the eligibility, determination, and compliance unit to catch up on eligibility extensions made during the COVID-19 pandemic when the assessment centers were closed. Since March of last year, we provided presumptive eligibility and extended eligibility for approximately 45,000 customers. Finally, this year's FTA triennial audit on November 1st will be modifying the no-show late cancellation policy that was implemented in 2018. These changes were requested by the FTA and can be viewed on our Accessoride website under Policies and Forms section. There will also be message in our Fall on the Move newsletter to be issued later this month. That concludes the paratransit report.
Thank you, Frank. Any questions? Victor?
As far as all the FTA changes, please make sure that you get it out to all the members as well. Email blast and all that. Even on Twitter, I think, is helpful. Is much information out. I don't particularly love the change in the rule, but I know it's FTA pushed, so if you can get that out, I appreciate that.
Duly noted. We'll take care of it.
And then mostly, it's a shortage of drivers that's driving some not being able to get the vehicles on the road. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes, it's the driver shortage. It's slow. It's slow. The carriers continue to place ads, provide incentives like signing bonuses, but it's a slow resumption. We see small progress every month.
And that's both on the broker and on the dedicated service, you're saying?
Yeah, it's primarily with the dedicated that we see a lot of the outreach, right? The brokers, it seems to be a shifting paradigm. Like the drivers are going from different one
yellow
to the other, right?
Uber,
but
and,
onboarding these additional brokers is essentially the plan to just to help keep up with it. So the more brokers we have, the more bandwidth we have, and as you know,
and we've definitely seen a decrease in an increase in wait times.
Yes, we have, but once again, the original decrease in metrics or increase in time, it was helped mitigated by the resumption of share ride and then share rides, and now we're starting to see, with these two new brokers and third, hopefully by early next year, as they ramp up, things shall continue to improve.
Thank you.
And just one other thing I'd like to add to it, Frank. In this month's performance, you'll see specifically the no-show rate on the broker side went down significantly. So as we're onboarding the new brokers, we're seeing that. So as a performance improvement.
Great. Any other questions for Frank? Okay. Chris Papandreou, can you give us an update on strategy and customer experience? Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Andrew had a question. Sorry, Chris.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Andrew. I didn't see your hand.
This is either for Craig, Patrick, Demetrius, or all three.
Okay.
Are we checking our Kawasaki fleet to make sure that none of our cars have the design, the axle flaw that is derailing trains on the DC Metro?
No, yeah, absolutely. Since we heard about that over the weekend, Demetrius has already reached out to Kawasaki. I know Tim from System Safety has been looking at that too. It doesn't appear right now we have the same axle, but we're keeping in close contact to make sure that we get all the information.
Thank you.
Good question, Andrew. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. and good afternoon to everyone. As ridership increases, so does the volume of customer contacts we receive and handle. We received 9% more telephone calls in September versus August, the highest since July 2020. In addition to handling incoming queries, our customer services team made over 3,200 calls to operating employees about vaccination interest. While this has an adverse effect on call center wait time, we continue to prioritize this effort, which contributes to increasing staff availability for our core business of operating transportation service. We are focused on several measures to reduce call wait time. We are adding staff to the call center, and as Sarah Meyer mentioned last month, the new contact center system we are implementing will increase call handling productivity. We're working to roll out Omni as quickly as possible. 40% of calls last month were concerning MetroCard issues at reduced fare. Our fall customer account and COVID travel survey ran through October 4th, and we received a tremendous 123,000 responses, the result of our efforts to promote the survey via direct email to customers, digital signage, social media, public address announcements, and other geographically target messaging. We are crunching this enormous amount of data and will publish the results next month. Last, a quick mention that MassForce is back again tomorrow. It's not too late to join us. Go to new.mta.info/MassForce.
Any questions for Chris? Okay, if not, we move on to Q. Can you give us an update on accessibility, please?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, and thank you all. We look forward to more innovative and more efficient means to delivering enhanced accessibility throughout our system, including many more new ADA station openings in the months and years ahead, especially with the passage of the October 7th Zoning for Accessibility Initiative by the New York City Council. Zoning for Accessibility will allow the MTA to leverage planned private development to make more stations more accessible more quickly through two key changes to the city's zoning resolutions: a requirement that developers in most mid or high density areas approach the MTA when designing a new project to determine whether the MTA needs an easement, a permanent access to a small piece of the property, for future accessibility projects at the adjacent station, and an expansion of the existing transit bonus program that incentivizes developers to directly fund and build transit accessibility improvements in exchange for a floor area bonus. We thank our partners at the Department of City Planning and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities who work tirelessly to make this initiative a reality, and the dozens of advocates who spoke and wrote to community boards and council members throughout the year to support this important project. Finally, we hit a major milestone this month with the soft launch of the Omni Reduced Fare program on subways and buses. Nearly 100 current reduced fare customers have volunteered to become the first reduced fare customers to use Omni and give us feedback over the course of the fall, including Commissioner Khaleesi. So thank you for that. These customers are testing a combination of the new Omni cards, their personal contactless credit or debit cards, and their cards on digital wallets. The soft launch participants will provide important insight on everything from setting up an Omni account to tapping on validators, so that we can ensure that the full rollout of Omni to reduced fare customers is as seamless as possible. We thank our soft launch participants for their time and feedback and look forward to welcoming many more customers to Omni in the coming months. We remain committed to making sure that all forums for feedback remain fully accessible, whether through web pages, in-person, and virtual meetings and events, or digital content. We thank riders who took the recent customer account survey, participated in the Central Business District Tolling Program hearings, and continue speaking at our monthly committee and board meetings. We look forward to continuing to work together toward a more accessible transit system. Thank you.
David. Thank you, Q.
Yeah, how is this working in conjunction with the Fair Fares program?
How is the
Omni and what you've just discussed, how does it mesh? Are you specifically targeting Fair Fares, people who are reduced fares?
So the pool that we're using right now are reduced fare customers for the Omni project. And again, this is just a soft launch. So we have about 100 people that are testing the Omni system that are all throughout the reduced fare program.
Reduced fare being specifically including Fair Fares?
So, David, I think I'm going to hop in here, Cormel.
Doesn't apply here.
No, Fair Fares does.
Yeah.
Fair Fares on Access-A-Ride is being used now.
Right.
And that's run, and then there's a partnership between Access-A-Ride and HRA to kind of push this. So yes, we are pushing those numbers. We should have an idea of how many people are on using Fair Fares, and that's 16 to 64. So, yeah. So yes, they are measuring that, and they do have that through Access-A-Ride.
Great. I'd like to hear. Yeah.
Any other questions for Q? Thank you, Q.
Believe me, I'm pushing it.
Okay, let's move on to safety and security. Tim, welcome.
Good afternoon. The safety statistics comparing the most recent 12-month period to the previous one indicate that the subway customer accident rates increased. However, on a monthly basis, we have seen a decrease year over year for the last 5 months. Our analysis and observations have shown that customer behavior changed as a result of the pandemic, resulting in increased slips, trips, and falls due to risky actions such as running and less use of handrails and handholds. An increase in traffic causes challenges affecting bus collisions. However, the current 12-month rate is still less than pre-pandemic levels. Injuries associated with collisions have declined, and customer accidents rose slightly. Employee lost time accidents have shown a decrease from last year. We've identified an increase in subway fires when comparing the most recent 12-month period to the previous one, and the measures that we've implemented with the Department of Subways to address them appear to be effective, as incidents have decreased in 2 of the past 3 months. I'm going to stop here for the crime report.
Thank you,
In
David.
terms of subway fires, is this again related, obviously, to trash on the tracks or in the tunnels? Give me some more flavor of this. I saw, I think, sent by MTA, different approaches that systems are taking worldwide to this issue, and the question of should we be considering some kind of significant limitation on the sale of food in the system.
We actually did a benchmarking with other properties.
Yes.
We didn't find much of a correlation between prohibition of food. Right now in our subways, the fires are largely related to debris in the subways. We had issues with addressing that issue, but now we've rediverted resources toward that effort, and we're seeing the decrease in those fires now.
Larry.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Yeah, just following up on Commissioner Jones, I mean, the reason why I asked it, I think, at the last meeting, the reason why I asked about food, right, also is not just about how much it contributes to possibly track fires, but it's also about the cleanliness, the ability to keep a station clean. It's keeping rodents, and it's about the health and safety of people that use it, because of being able to just stay up with the issues that food may cause if it's in the stations for a long period of time. So look, I'm not trying to deny people the ability to eat or drink. It's just that whether or not, there's best practices in other parts of the country or around the world. It shows that passengers will be fine if they aren't allowed to bring food down into the subway station, and that there's many positive benefits to limiting or prohibiting things like bringing food down into the system. And that's what I was interested in, not just pertaining to track fires, but just an overall health and safety issue for the system.
Great. Okay, we're ready. Tim, you want to continue? Or is the inspector going to give us a report now? Inspector?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to provide the following update on transit crime on behalf of Chief O'Reilly. You'll notice in the committee book that the year-to-date crime remains down in the subway system, though we took an uptick in overall crime during the month of September. There were 68 additional incidents compared to the same month last year, most of them larcenies. A number of these recent crimes resulted in an arrest at or near the scene. After a suspect stole a neck chain from a man at Metropolitan Avenue, officers from Transit District 33 arrested him after a brief search, charging him with robbery. Plainclothes officers in District 34 arrested a suspect after they saw him grab a man and remove his wallet by force. He was charged with robbery as well. There was a number of arrests from larcenies from sleeping passengers over the past month, something we continue to caution riders about. On September 5th, plainclothes officers in Transit District 20 saw a man searching for sleeping victims on the 7 train in Queens. They then witnessed him remove property from a man's hand and quickly arrested him. On the 22nd, officers arrested a 17-year-old for removing a phone from a sleeping passenger aboard a D train in the Bay 50th station. On the 25th, our plainclothes team witnessed a suspect sit next to a sleeping passenger on the 7 train at Main Street Flushing Station and remove property from his pocket. They immediately arrested him and charged him with grand larceny. And finally, on the 26th, plainclothes officers were alerted to a woman whose property was removed as she fell asleep on the platform bench at 42nd Street on the A line. After a brief investigation, they apprehended the suspect as he was attempting to use the victim's credit card to make a purchase. There was also 3 illegal firearms recovered from suspects in the transit system during the month of September. One involved an arrest of a man who was fighting another man at the Prospect Avenue station. A second firearm was recovered from a suspect who caught the attention of an MTA employee who alerted our officers. And the third firearm was recovered by plainclothes officers who observed the suspect in possession of a gun at the Brooklyn Bridge station. Each were arrested and charged accordingly. That concludes my briefing on some of the many arrests our officers have made recently. I thank you all for your time, and more importantly, I thank all for your continued partnership as we welcome more riders back into the subway system.
So, Inspector, thank you. David, just like to want to add something. So you said...
Yeah, I see in November schedule, we're going to have a major report from the Transit Adjudication Bureau and the fare evasion report. I've been asking for how detailed, both demographically, which stations are focused on, and the issue of bus fare evasion. I'm concerned, and I have been expressing this for a long time, on equity in the system. I think fare evasion is system-wide, but I'd like to get some knowledge from those reports, and just in advance I'm asking, that we really dive into the numbers, the allocation of resources, where people are being, where we're determining fare evasion is most chronic, and whether we're doing the same kind of analysis on some of the bus routes that we are actually doing in the subways. So we've never really, it's sort of always been bushy. I asked early on in the tenure, give me a station-by-station breakout. I won't even make the joke of what they told me initially, but I won't do that. It's not fair. But I think we need a deeper understanding of this before we keep rehashing it. And also the demographics of who's being stopped, who's being arrested, and a range of other items. So I'm just in preparation for that. I hope we're ready for a major report on this issue.
Okay, understood. Larry, and then I just want to ask the inspector something. Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Ada. Yeah, I want to echo and support Commissioner Jones. He has been nothing but, he's always a class act and he's a gentleman. But I got to tell you, he has been asking, since we first had the first meeting and conversation about fare evasion, Commissioner Jones has raised this issue. And so this is years. And for years, he's never gotten an answer to his questions. And his questions have been fair and legitimate. And I don't think people should show up and give us a briefing on fare evasion if they're not going to be prepared to answer the commissioner's questions, among other questions we've had. I mean, this has gone full circle 16 times. We never, ever seem to really know how big the problem is, You know, the numbers have jumped all over the place. As far as I'm concerned, we were never given an accurate picture at the very beginning of how big and how bad the problem was. And it clearly showed that our problem was disproportionately bad compared to the rest of the country. And that was on a best case scenario. The best case scenario wasn't the real scenario. And then, you know, we had a problem with the way we did our counting. Our surveys were flawed. The statistical analysis was flawed. We didn't have enough people doing the counting, and on and on and on. So yes, we have a unique problem with buses, separate from the unique problem with subways, and the bus problem is bigger from a fare evasion point of view. But no one knows really how bad this problem is. No one. And that's kind of a scary thing when you're trying to put a budget together and pass a budget on something that's costing us $500 million a year, $1 billion a year, whatever it is. You want to talk about, you want to solve in part the fare evasion problem. Or I could take some of that lost revenue and apply it to putting in new gates for people to walk through, for the handicap. I'm just telling you, we could be doing lots of things. I mean, I don't expect it to go down to zero. But the fare evasion has been another one of these frustrating topics. And I'll just speak for myself. We never know what the bottom line is. We never know what the real number is. We never come up with this plan and the solutions to minimize the problem, right? I never see progress. We get, and so I'm just saying to, Haida, I will, as chair of the finance committee, and you're chair of New York City Transit, I will work with you over the next 3-4 weeks and members of the two committees. My attitude is, do not come to brief us in November unless you're prepared, unless you're ready. And prepared and ready means you're going to have answers to all the questions we've been raising for years and the questions we'll raise at that November meeting. Thank you.
Pat, do you want to add anything, or just want to wait, or?
No, it's you know, it's a wicked problem. It's a huge challenge. There's a lot of factors in it, and we have put a lot of energy into it, and we'll be glad to put this information forward and hopefully answer the questions, you know, to the best of our ability.
And Larry, I will.
Yeah, I can't. I'm like a dog with a rag in its mouth on this, because I remember. And Tim is here. He's over there. I remember when he sat over there and we had our first meeting with bar graphs up there, and the bar graphs they weren't accurate. The information wasn't accurate. It was at least twice as bad as what we were led to believe. I'm just letting you know. We talked about Eagle teams and increasing the Eagle teams, and that didn't work. I don't even know why it didn't work. And I'm not sure, and again, I'm not finding fault with people, but when you're a board member and you have a fiduciary responsibility, this is not a $5 million problem. This is not a $50 million problem. I'm scared that it's more than a $500 million problem, or it's $400 million. That is a huge. Originally, when this is told us, it was like 100, right? 100. Then it became 250 or 300. I'm sure it's worse than that, but we don't know. So when you think of all the things that are costing this agency a lot of money, and I don't understand why, with all the brightest minds at the NYPD, the MTA, best practices again, all that we haven't figure out a way to really understand what the problem is, what it's costing us, and how to minimize it. There's always going to be fare evasion, okay? No one expects fare evasion to stop or the MTA to make it go away. But again, it's like speed. It's like all these other things we talk about. We need closure. We need to find resolution to these problems. Otherwise, we're going to be, people are going to be sitting here 2 years from now, 3 years from now, having the same conversation, just like Commissioner Jones has been sitting there having this conversation about equity. And where are we enforcing fare evasion? And are we doing it on a fairness basis? So I'm just, I sound a little passionate, but it's also based on frustration that, we don't seem as a board to ever get to resolution on some of these things, and it's got to change.
No, you're right. Yeah, no, I hear you, Larry, and you're right. You're passionate because it's the right thing to be passionate about. Andrew?
Yeah, so
Randy?
I've spoken on this topic, and
Many
David,
times.
many times. Every time I ride, I see people beating the fare. It is all walks of
All
life.
walks of life, right.
Any figures
All
that
over
you
the
have
system.
on fare evasion are a snapshot in time because it changes by the day. People see people not having to pay, and they say, what, am I, an idiot? Why am I paying? And it just gets worse and worse. And you know who it hurts the most? Poor New Yorkers, because that means more frequent and higher fare increases and or service cuts. So you're not helping anybody. We've got to get to the bottom of this. I think the bottom line is a new fare control system, a new fare entry system. When President Byford was here, we spoke about that. There are many kinds of systems. AirTrain has one right here in Queens where there's sliding glass doors. Just something so it isn't a sieve and a cinch to stroll in. I see people actually now waiting for in non-attended entries of stations, waiting for the train to come and somebody to actually exit through the slam gate, and then we'll rush in. They will actually wait for several trains until somebody actually opens the door for them. That's where we are. So to certify what Dave is saying, Commissioner Jones, we need total system-wide enforcement. That's what we need everywhere, because it is everywhere. Thank you.
Randy? Victor?
I shared this picture when I took it in 2019. This is a high wheel, like this. This is in Morocco. I mean, yes. I mean, so I sent it to then Ronnie Haycom about it. It's not very popular, but there's no fare evasion here.
Victor?
So the other day I saw something that I've never seen before, that someone actually had a key to the slam gate and opened it up for someone else. I saw that at Broadway Lafayette. So I wasn't sure what to do, but the guy just took off after that, but they had a key. So just as an FYI.
Okay. Inspector, I wanted to ask you a question. When you said month over month, we had 68 more grand larceny incidents from last September, or was it from last month?
That was from last month.
From last month, okay.
Right.
Thank you for that. All right, any other questions for Tim or the inspector? Okay, so we move on. Transit doesn't have any procurements, but Steve is here to present a procurement for C&D. Where are you, Steve?
Good morning. I should say good afternoon. Construction and Development has one procurement action being brought to the Transit and Bus Committee this month. The action requests ratification of a modification in the amount of $1,198,000 to the contract for roof and interior drainage system replacement for the 207th Street Overhaul Shop with D'Onofrio General Contracting Corporation. The modification is to repair the roof of the nearby boiler house at the 207th Street yard. The boiler house supplies steam to the entire 207th Street yard and has experienced persistent leaks in its roof. In addition, an inspection has also revealed that the roof has structural defects. These conditions create a potentially unsafe environment and threaten damage to the electrical and mechanical components inside the boiler house. The repairs required to the boiler house roof are similar to the work being performed on the overhaul shop, which is in the same site approximately 100 feet away. Therefore, C and D determined that the best course of action was to address this condition by modification to this contract, as the contractor is uniquely positioned to perform the work in the most time and cost-efficient way. I submit this procurement action for your consideration and vote.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the procurement? Randy, second. Bob? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? The procurement carries. Thank you. You do something, and then we have to approve the minutes, which I forgot to do in the beginning. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Hayden. So the other reports which are in this book, financial and ridership and capital program status, and staff is here to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions? Okay. So before we adjourn, we need to approve the September committee minutes. Andrew, I'm sorry that I didn't do this sooner. Any amendments to the meeting?
Since
To the
it
minutes?
affects what I said, I have to. On page 11, it says, Board Member Albert inquired about looking at third-party infiltration, not filtration.
Okay.
Big difference.
Okay.
And on page 17, I asked about if the R211 train cars would line up with platform humps, not just platforms.
Gotcha.
Thank
Okay.
you.
With those two amendments, do I hear a motion to approve the September board minutes? Approve. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Abstentions? Okay, motion carried. Anything else? Okay, yes.
Just one thing.
Victor.
Frank, thanks. Accessory right email already went out for the FTA stuff, so thank you. That was really quick.
Great. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Adjourn, okay, second. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.